Well, welcome everybody to this webinar where we're going to share some marketplace insights on the state of technology across Australia and New Zealand in logistics. And we'll have a look at how that's forming a very clear race for a competitive edge. Technology is most certainly a key driver for competition and differentiation these days. So we encourage your questions, and please don't be shy to add them into the chat part of this webinar. We'll have time at the end to answer them. So we may even touch on some questions as we go through that fit the content as we work our way through it. So there's a couple of people hosting today. I'll get into introductions in just a minute. But firstly, in terms of how this webinar will play out, I expect the content that we'll share with you today will take around 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes to present, which leaves us plenty of time to answer your questions. So on to the introductions. Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Spence. I'm the Chief Growth Officer for Sandfield. I've been kind of in and around logistics for just over 20 years. I've seen a lot of trends, a lot of pain points come and go. I've seen how tech has really made a big difference to how organizations operate. I've spent a lot of time talking to customers and hearing kind of what they are wanting and what they think really matters. And today I'm pretty keen to share with you some marketplace insights. Alan.
Yep, thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. My name's Alan. I've been at Sandfield for just about 20 years now, but in the software industry for over 20 years. Pretty much all my time here at Sandfield's been around building supply chain systems, so across a number of verticals: transport, 3PL, 4PL, forwarding, shipping, distribution, and finance. And my role here at Sandfield is I head up the Origin team.
Thanks, Alan. Okay, so let's start with a global view on what's happening in the world that is affecting supply chains. Global growth is stagnating. The World Bank is projecting global growth will be the slowest of any decade since the 1960s. And just recently, the global GDP forecast has been downgraded or cut from 2.7 to 2.3%. Global trade volatility coming out of the White House seems to be constant, never ending with tariffs and trade wars and all sorts of escalating tensions. Global trade is expanding in Africa and Southeast Asia and Latin America, all markets and regions that have population growth. So let's look at the global shipping environment for a minute. Very soon, in fact, next month, the USA will announce significant new fees for Chinese vessels entering the USA. If they are not accepted, they will result quite simply in entry bans. The International Maritime Bureau reports 72% of global shipping piracy occurs in the South Pacific region. It's not off the African coast like you may expect. And this is due to the sheer number of vessel movements in the Straits of Malacca, off Singapore and Indonesia. And guess what? Most of our goods come through those waters. There are some new green-based volatilities emerging. The IMO has launched its greenhouse shipping strategy, which sets a clear path towards decarbonisation. There is a goal of net zero emissions by or around 2050. So they want to cut emissions from international shipping as soon as possible. So what's all this mean for us? Well, the Indo-Pacific region is experiencing rapid population growth, and it has 60% of the world's population and is outperforming most other regions. So the question is, how do we get our fair share of that growth? There's no doubt we're moving from an industrial society to a digital society. And digital transformation is accelerating faster than most of us can absorb. So let's explore what these technology changes mean for the logistics and transport sector across New Zealand and Australia. So before we do that, we'll have a quick introduction to Sandfield. and set some context around why we're so interested in technology that's used in supply chain and logistics. So we at Sandfield help our customers get a competitive edge through technology. That is why we do what we do. We're based in NZ with a growing team in Australia. And what we do can be summed up in 4 areas of specialty and focus. Origin is a suite of technology solutions for supply chain companies. Crossfire is our fully managed integration service. On Account is our finance management system, which is in use with businesses ranging from 100 million to 8 billion in revenues. And lastly, Edge is our custom software design and build business. Alan's going to explain a little bit more about the Origin business.
Thanks, Chris. So Origin is a suite of solutions that we've developed for supply chains and logistics companies. So those solutions cover container freight stations, so packing and unpacking containers, and replacing the manual operations that we often see there. Transport management solutions, particularly around container, bulk, general freight, but also handling specialized commodities as well, such as petroleum or livestock. Got finance solutions, so we can transact the whole way through the supply chain and make sure that your revenues and your costs are being captured accurately. Customer portals and visibility solutions. And all those solutions are built on top of our Origin platform. And what the Origin platform does is integrate different best of breed solutions from within your supply chain, as well as your partners that are involved in your supply chain together. So you've got one source of truth for all your supply chain data, one place where it's all made sense of, and one place where you can orchestrate your whole supply chain. And that platform also allows us to build customized solutions on that as well, where you do have gaps in your supply chain.
Thanks, Alan. So hopefully that's some context to the research results you're about to see. So let's look into the industry survey we conducted about 2 months ago. It's fair to say we had some questions. We had a lot of questions, and we wanted to get some straight answers from technology professionals, from company leaders, from salespeople, those in operations and transport roles. We had a very wide and open survey to go to a bunch of these people across NZ and Australia. The insights, you could say, have been a bit of a wake-up call for many in the industry, including us. So I'm looking forward to sharing these findings with you today. So here's what we did. We surveyed 85 logistics and transport companies across New Zealand and Australia. We won't kind of get into a lot of the demographics. That's the boring part. Let's get into the results. But suffice to say, we kind of represented all sizes of companies, slight skew towards New Zealand. So the first question we asked was to get straight to it. So we said, well, how happy are you with your pace of technology change? So what do you guys think? Do you think people in this industry are happy with the pace of technology change? Well, sadly, the results aren't overly great. Only 28% of companies said that they're satisfied their technology is evolving at the speed they need it to. Over half of the respondents are stuck in neutral. And so, think about the global economy as well, with tight margins, strong competitions, just average technology and average satisfaction with technology is not going to cut it. So let's look at what makes the high performers satisfied. What are they doing that's different from others? Well, let's start with the happy companies. 81% of them said they had excellent or good integration capabilities. They were also more likely to partner with tech companies that enabled co-development of their solution as opposed to a more rigid off-the-shelf SaaS solution. And the unhappy ones, the dissatisfied ones, had one large factor in common, and that is they did not measure their ROI when they changed or upgraded technology. So there's a saying, You can't improve what you don't measure, and this data clearly showed that. Okay, so this comparison's got to come at some stage. Let's do it. So how did the Kiwi companies compare to the Aussie companies on how happy they were with their pace of technology change? Who's happiest? Well, I think us Kiwis are going to have to concede defeat on this one. Those Aussie companies are happier. And the Aussie companies are more likely to co-develop their tech. They're more likely to be better at integration. And they most certainly said that they are going to spend more on tech in the next 12 months. The New Zealand companies, well, they are more likely to pitch their tech to win new clients. And they're also leading the adoption of AI. But they're not as happy overall with their pace of technology change. So let's have a look at who's spending. Well, let me say this. Investment in technology is not slowing down. 94% say they are going to spend the same or more. And only 6% said they're going to spend less in the next 12 months. And remember the dissatisfied companies we saw on a slide previous? 100% of the dissatisfied companies said that they will spend more on tech in the next 12 months. Perhaps they're feeling they needed to play catch up. So despite slowing global growth, trade volatility, rising costs, tech spend is showing no signs of slowing. And the next slide is going to explain why. And here's a hint. It's not about viewing tech investment as a cost. It's about seeing tech as an enabler for cost efficiency. And 79% of companies said exactly that. They invest in tech to get a cost reduction and efficiency gains. So yes, that tech investment needs to pay for itself and more. Close behind is the need for better data visibility and insights. We see this interest translating into customer report portal applications and various reporting type requests. So customers are demanding a better digital experience. What makes the tech innovators different is they deliver enhancements before the customers ask. So we all know why companies invest in tech, but what about the barriers they're facing? Well, there's not too many surprise barriers here to advancing technology. Budget we'll talk about in a minute, but I did want to mention legacy systems. So yes, there are a lot of well-entrenched legacy systems out there where people are fearful of what might happen if they changed. Many have had a lot of development over many years and some even decades, meaning that they're very, very customized. And so there's a belief out there that there is no modern system that could be flexible enough to be a worthy replacement. And that's a myth we love to break and have a challenge up against with, because time and time again, the out-of-the-box functionality that we're able to demonstrate has a lot of raised eyebrows, and legacy systems finally do get knocked over. I did want to mention skill shortages. These are a real issue. You know, companies are being challenged with bringing on new roles like a transformation manager to help make tech change happen. But I'll let you in on a finding that we came across. Remember, I said earlier that you can't improve what you don't measure? Well, here's a trap that a lot of companies fall into. So getting budget is the number one constraint. You can see it there. And we know that reduction is the number one driver, or cost reduction is the number one driver of tech spend. Yet over half don't measure the impact of their tech spend. So no one really knows if it makes a difference or not in lowering operational costs. And this just makes it harder to justify the next tech project. Alan, I'm going to bring you in here. Why do you think logistics companies don't measure ROI on their tech investments?
Nice, easy question for one, Chris. I'll just call out a question from the audience as well. So we had Miriam ask, do a large group not measure ROI at all? I think you just answered it before, Chris. About 50% of those that we surveyed that they don't measure it. So it is quite a large group. So I think it's probably stating the obvious to a degree, but it is pretty hard to do to measure the ROI, and I think that's the main reason we don't see it going on very often. So I think when you're doing these large projects, it can be somewhat easy to measure the cost in terms of the investment on the technology. You know how much you're spending on the software. You know how much you're spending in services to implement that software. But there's a lot of other factors that go on that are hard to measure. So on the cost side, um, you might not be, for instance, you might not have a good baseline of data from your old system that you're replacing that can measure costs such as inefficiencies around entering data. And those inefficiencies can mean that you're having to correct data later when you're doing invoicing, which means you're getting invoicing problems. You're having to redo invoices and you're getting cash coming in late into the business. So are you measuring those sorts of things? And even harder, possibly on the returns of the investment, where those aren't always easily attributed to the software that's being implemented. So if you put software in that's improving the efficiency of your business and perhaps resulting in more sales, is the salesperson taking credit for that increase of sales, or are you attributing back to the software? And I think it all comes back to when you're kicking off these projects, having really clear goals that you're trying to achieve and being able to set against these goals how you're going to measure the return and the cost of implementing each of those things as well. And I think to your point about getting budget, Chris, a lot of what we see often is that people spend a lot of effort and time perhaps on the things that aren't so important, getting the last 0.01% of a solution right for those exception cases, which perhaps don't justify themselves if you truly measure the costs and you look at um, the return that you're going to get on those things. And that's where you get the scope creep and things like that happening. On the flip side, because people don't measure those costs very well, you tend to see underinvestment in areas that really deserve it, such as integration or even things like change management, which will make a massive difference to the success of the project. Get undervalued because people aren't costing those out properly as part of the implementation.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. I'll throw one more piece in there. ROI is generally poorly measured by clients because they're straight on to the next project. And software vendors like Sandfield and Alan's Origin business need to do better. And we need to push our clients to say, well, let us help you measure the ROI. We've seen frameworks, we know how it's done, we should play a role in that as well. So let's push through the barriers and now look at, well, what applications are up for replacement? What are people saying they're going to spend money on? Well, guess what? Transport management systems win the outright race, and fairly convincingly. So this suggests there are a lot of companies running a TMS right now that is no longer fit for purpose. So why is that? Have they outgrown it? Have their business or customer demands got more complex and their TMS cannot cope? Or has it just not been improved over time to stay relevant with what the market needs right now? Or a combination of the above. Customer portals and reporting are a close second. It's also worth noting, as Ellen mentioned just now, that integration is up there and it's ahead of WMS or warehouse management systems. We'll touch on integration shortly. So there's not just a lot of technology change happening, but the depth of change is remarkable. 65% of companies said that they are going to be upgrading or replacing more than one system in the next 12 months. So how are they going to cope with all this change? Because changing these systems rob people of time to do their day jobs. So will there be fallout for customers to deal with? Who knows? But the bar is certainly moving upward. And customers are going to welcome better technology. But what do customers actually want? Customers want visibility, more visibility of their freight and shipments, and in real time. And they also expect cost efficiencies through technology improvements. They want a self-serve digital experience, and why shouldn't they? Because if you think of it, their B2C experiences with the likes of Amazon and Uber have shown them what's possible. So how good are we right now in giving customers great visibility of their freight movements within a B2B environment? Well, we're not that great. 62% of customers receive minimal or some visibility of their freight. So there is significant room to improve. And great visibility requires great integration, and that's end of story, as you can see on the far right. And great visibility also requires alignment of data from various sources within the supply chain. And this alignment needs to be contextualized in some kind of framework that replicates a particular supply chain's milestones. We see this as an integrated live database, and it's the heartbeat for great visibility, and quickly becomes the single source of truth for a logistics company. Something we've got deep experience in and have seen how this single source of truth brings efficiency and also fuels visibility. Ellen, I'm going to bring you back in here. Why do you think customer visibility is still so hit and miss, with only 62% having minimal or partial in this day and age? Why is that?
Yeah, I think it's been a long-standing trend that what we see with people we work with is they have best-of-breed solutions for the different parts of their businesses, which makes a lot of sense because then you get solutions that are very good at what they need to do. So, specialized transport management systems or warehousing systems or finance systems. It's very hard to get one system that does everything. The downside of that is you do have siloed and fragmented data. So you got some of it over in your TMS or WMS, some often your finance system, some of it might even sit with your partners in the supply chain as well, so your suppliers. And so those systems don't really know how to talk to each other. So if they do have a visibility portion built into that system, say for example in your TMS, it doesn't know how to show any visibility into your WMS side as well. So that's a big challenge we see with our customers is how do you bring all that data together in one place, make sense of it, store it securely, structure it in a way that it makes sense across the supply chain, and then orchestrate what's happening across that supply chain and provide it into a layer where customers can really make sense of it. Even we're still, I've been doing this for 20 years and it was what we started doing 20 years ago, but it's still the same thing today. There's still spreadsheets going on in a lot of places, and that makes your life very tough if you're running things off the side of your desk to provide customers visibility.
Sure is. So next we're going to talk about how technology is built and delivered. And this was a bit of a revelation to us in the study. It's a very important attribute that drives satisfaction. Let me talk you through it. We can tell you that 42% of companies that co-develop their tech with a partner are either satisfied or very satisfied. So there are many ways you can implement technology. You'll see up there on the top right. And whilst there's certainly a role for SaaS solutions, they have the highest amount of neutral responses. So people aren't lovers, they're not haters, it's just, okay. Building an in-house bespoke solution has the highest dissatisfaction, but also a solid amount of satisfaction as well. So very polarized. When you're building a solution, you can build exactly what you want. Some people love it, some people don't. But as I mentioned before, co-developing with an external partner took the honors for the most satisfied approach. And Alan, I'll bring you in one more time. Why do you think SaaS users are more neutral than those that co-develop with a tech partner? What do you think could explain that?
Yeah, I think SaaS solutions are often viewed as a commodity. So it's put on there to solve a particular problem. You don't tend to have a relationship with the vendor directly. So that certainly affects the relationship or the satisfaction with the SaaS solution. But I think beyond that, yeah, in this industry, there's a lot of complicated things going on within the supply chains and a lot of gotchas. And I think often where we see it is our customers have signed up a new contract, for example, and as part of that new contract, they need to implement some new business process that the customer requires as part of the contract. Software has to change to implement that new process. And we're using a SaaS solution that can either be very slow to change or you can't change it at all. So as a business, you're trying to be agile and win these new customers, win these new contracts, grow in different areas. But the software can't support that. And so I think that lack of influence over the software and over the roadmap leads to a bit of dissatisfaction.
Thanks, Alan. So, guys, I mentioned integration before. We're now going to move on to this area of the survey, and I can tell you it received the most mentions out of any other area. So, rating your integration capability, you can see the results pretty clearly. There is a direct correlation between poor integration and dissatisfaction with your pace of tech change. So obviously, you've got to get your systems communicating effectively before you can kind of bank the efficiency and operational gains. So I can't stress enough how average to poor integration is a roadblock for technology innovation. And adequate just doesn't cut it in this digital world. So we're most of the way through the webinar, a few more slides left. And so far, have you talked AI, Ellen? I don't think I've mentioned AI. You haven't mentioned AI, have you?
Not yet.
Well, here it comes. Let's talk AI. Nearly half of the 85 companies surveyed were planning, piloting, or using AI in production. This is pretty much what we expected. But here's what we didn't expect. That number, 48%, jumps to 81% if you look at companies who are under 250 mil in revenue. So it seems like the larger companies are slower off the mark with their AI adoption. AI's use in the sector is in the very early stages, with active use in things like document processing, removing the manual tasks in populating fields and forms, data entry, chatbots. There's some optimization and some forecasting solutions using AI. The majority of the AI use was embedded in existing vendor applications. So it's time for a pretty bold statement here. It feels like technology is an important thing for a logistics company. But the question is, how important for a competitive edge? Well, logistics companies are tech-driven companies. They differentiate, compete, and win new clients on technology. 80% of them said tech is important or critical for maintaining a competitive edge. And, yep, that blew us away. Logistics companies will win the competitive race through technology. Sure, there's other things like rates, like people, like reach, assets like trucks and vessels and storage. They're all important, don't get us wrong, but they are harder to differentiate on. So we're baffled to learn why only 35% of companies say they always highlight their tech when trying to win new business. 35%, that's low. And 45% of companies only sometimes or never pitch their tech. Maybe they don't think it's good enough to show. But 80% of you say that it's important or critical for a competitive edge. Okay, so let's summarize what we've learned today and hopefully some useful steps you can take back to your organizations. The first one, give thought to how your tech partnerships work. Whether you partner with internal or external resources, I can tell you happy companies choose partnerships that weren't constrained by internal resources and where tech partners co-developed to improve systems over time. I'd say get great at integration. What you invest here will pay you back in spades across your business, and your customers will notice. Get great at pitching your tech. Sell the sizzle and sell the wonderful digital experiences that you can create. The technology's here, and there are no excuses. Point 4, put some effort into measuring the effect new tech is having on your business and lean on vendors like us to help you do it. It'll pave the way for your next project. And we got to AI. Lastly, but not leastly, AI has arrived. It's rapidly going to evolve. I'd say get on the bandwagon. Your clients will probably judge you on it. But before we get carried away on AI, let's remember 62% of customers have minimal or some visibility of their freight. So the basics have a long way to improve. So let me be clear, it's not about spending more or necessarily ripping and replacing legacy systems. It's about seeing how your tech can lower your cost to serve and help you scale efficiently and help you win new business. So that's our hot take on what we have learned from surveying 85 companies. We've now distilled in 3 more slides, 3 things that need urgent attention. Getting the foundations right with systems that are flexible to cope with complexity and systems that can share information. And not just being good at integration, but being great at integration. Self-service portals are huge and will only gather even more momentum as they importantly hold the key to visibility and just a whole lot more. So setting the foundations. Yep, more digitization is needed. Many of our clients have decade-old systems that kind of do the job. They can adapt to complexity. However, there are many systems that are holding back companies to scale and win new business. It's those systems that need to be kicked for touch. So tech and logistics in the last 2 years has come a long way. And Origin is one of the new players out there that have a suite of new solutions that can assist with containers, bulk, refrigerated, general transport, as Ellen mentioned before. But we've had 30 years of doing this and just a few with these new products that we've launched to the market. They're all pre-integrated with customer portals and deployed in a handful of weeks and with a development roadmap that'll make others pretty envious. And just on that product roadmap, it is something that we share widely. A new customer said to me recently, in fact, last week, you don't just choose an application for today, but you're trying to choose the right vendor, but also the platform for years to come. So it's a much longer view in terms of how customers are making decisions on these platforms. Do you have anything to add on that, Alan?
Yeah, I think just coming back to my point earlier, Chris, it still staggers me how often we see spreadsheets floating around out there. So I think there's lots of excitement around AI at the moment, but whilst you're still running your business on spreadsheets and systems that don't talk to each other, there's a long way to go before you're going to get there with things like AI.
Exactly. So integration and data, we've talked about this a lot today. Integration done well is the lifeblood of any logistics company. Our take on integration is simple. Let us manage it and you get on with what you're good at. Our Crossfire integration platform configures, deploys, and monitors integrations. We monitor every EDI message, every API call from one system to another. Any failure gets triaged and resolved by our team. That's what we call a fully managed service. We haven't come across a message standard, a file type, or a system we couldn't integrate with yet. And we've got over 300 supply chain customers around the world. So we've pretty much seen it all. Do you have a comment on that, Alan?
Yeah, we also had a question coming from the audience about this. So what are the main challenges of integration systems used in the same organizations? And then a cheeky reply from somebody else saying lack of Zapier uptake. But I think that's an interesting point that, I guess what we see in terms of the challenges with integration being a lot of systems just aren't ready for integration. Doesn't mean they can't be integrated with. There's always ways of working around it, and that's what our Crossfire team is specialists in. But tools like Zapier just can't integrate with a lot of the systems that we see used within the industry. I think it's often pretty complex with the data that's being exchanged between the systems and takes some pretty specialist expertise and knowing the best way to do that integration, timing of when you should do the integration, what the right data to integrate between those systems is. And then, coming back to one of Chris's points earlier, there is a lack of expertise around in terms of doing that. But I think it's also one of the integration challenges is it's not just within your own business, it's outside your business as well. So might be integrating with your customers and they don't have a good integration team, or integrating with your suppliers and they don't have a good integration team. So again, that's where having that expertise that can navigate through that's really important.
Thanks, Alan. Okay, so last slide. The last area we think needs urgent attention is visibility and self-service. There's no question that there's a race on to deliver a better customer experience than the next logistics company. And the industry has clearly said tech is a differentiator and they need better tech, which is great for tech vendors. It's also great for customers. And it's this kind of tech-enabled self-serve world is bringing greater efficiencies as a whole to logistics companies. Alan, you've seen a lot in this space. Would you like to kind of leave us with one last comment?
Yeah, I have seen a lot of this space. Yeah, I mean, we see it every week with our customers that they are going out there and they are pitching their technology as part of their sales pitch to new customers, and that's a large part of that technology stack. They're pitching is their customer visibility. But it's amazing how broadly, when we look broadly out there, how few people do actually have that as part of their sales pitch, and how few do actually provide visibility solutions at all. It really is table stakes for this industry now. And I think part of the reason that people don't do it is coming back to the previous 2 points as well. They just don't have their data well organized. They don't have systems that are capable of providing that visibility, and they don't have the expertise to integrate those systems together into a platform that can provide that visibility.
Cool. Thanks, Alan. So that slide kind of concludes the presentation part of the webinar. Oh, yeah, so there were a couple of other kind of visibility examples here that we wanted to show. Things need to look beautiful. They need to work well. End of story. And as Alan said, it's just table stakes out there. So thanks everybody for attending. We'll go to the Q&A in a second. So I wanted to say, if you want a full copy of the research study, you can go to originsupplychain.com, or we can follow up with those of you that have consented for us to have your contact details and send you the slide deck and the full report. I'd also like any feedback. So if you can pop into the chat whether you liked this kind of content or you didn't, then please let us know. We're keen on bringing thought leadership to the market. We're keen on using kind of market research, asking companies out there their thoughts. Were these areas the right areas, or was there missing kind of parts of the puzzle in your mind? Please tell us what they were, and we'll include those on our research in the future. Would love to get your feedback, guys. So thanks so much. Alan, I was just going to go across to the question and see if we've got any more questions that we might want to kind of cover.
I think there was only one more from Tim asking, did the survey look at understanding the business requirements before selecting a solution? I'm not actually sure that there was anything around that.
No,
Survey,
that's
Chris,
a
but good,
that's a good
one.
one. Yeah, nice one. I mean, thanks, Tim. It's something we can include in next year's study. In my experience, business requirements are kind of few and far between in this industry vertical, particularly. Some do it quite well, most don't, and they kind of ask their vendors to come in and kind of gather some of those insights. Would that be your experience as well, Alan?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm just going to bring it back to the ROI discussion as well, which it's amazing how often people have decided what the return will be on the software before they've even defined their requirements. So it's an interesting point.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, and thank you so much, everybody, for the comments. Really appreciate it. Like getting feedback is like a really important part of us of us doing this, and we intend to run the survey annually, and then kind of look at some of the change metrics across the various kind of sections that we're asking, and that's going to hopefully give us more interesting insights, and we'll see if that gap between New Zealand and Aussie companies grows or tightens up in terms of their satisfaction. So let's do one last check, Alan. If there's no more new questions, then we'll probably close this out.
No, I think that's it.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks everybody, and yep, get in touch if you need to. Cheers.
Thanks all.
Bye.